Welcome to the Alien Probe Podcast. It is Saturday, June 24th. I'm Doug. Joining me today is Bob from MUFON. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. And have to clarify that. I'm a brand new member of MUFON. Brand new. I just joined about a week ago.
Oh, so you went to the meetings?
Yeah, I was going to the meetings. I started a little over a year ago when I found out they were having the meetings, and I finally retired from AT&T and had some time to kind of look into this stuff. And I thought the meetings would be fun to attend, and I think I probably attended half of them. You know, family events come up or things happen. You can't make every single meeting. But I've probably been to 6 or 8 of them, I guess.
You find them interesting? There's a lot of people with...
I find them interesting, and they have, you know, occasionally they'll have guest speakers who really have some interesting stories. And I was just telling a family member the other day that, like you and I talked earlier, I also have never seen a UFO. I've never seen an alien.
Yeah.
You know, I'm one of those.
Me neither.
But I'm just interested in the topic.
Yep.
But you get people in these meetings that have experienced all kinds of stuff. And for many of them, I've spoken to them on the side, and many of them feel like that's the only safe place they can tell their story. You know? So, you know, I listen to what they have to say and just take it in, and, you know, it's another story out there to add to the pile.
We have an experiencer coming on in July. We're hoping to have him carve out some time for us. Mm-hmm. And he was a little apprehensive about coming on the show, and he's had huge experiences with extraterrestrials and things, and he was a little nervous about it, so he called me. He says, I want to talk to you on the phone first, kind of vet me out, see what we're about. And then he came up here, and you know, he had some Corona and pizza, and talked. We lasted a couple of hours talking. Really? He made us a list of all the things that he's experienced.
Oh my gosh!
And it's really incredible. So I said, you know, we're kind of, you know, you might want to bring us to a little bit larger venue. I mean, we're not a huge podcast. I mean, there's bigger things. And he said, I just, to your point, it says, I just wanted to, I just wanted to tell it to someone. He says, I've lost 2 neighbors by telling them this story because they thought I was, you know, out there, you know, and
it's gonna be pretty drastic when you up and move.
Friends and just, I mean, people have a strong, you know, I have a more than a passive interest in the subject, and I want to talk. So he felt better. Just we had another gentleman with us that he's the one that actually brought him to me, and he says, no, yours is the perfect venue. And you know, I said, well, maybe after we do the show, then I could talk to Dev, our MUFON person, and say, you know, he can pretty much take up a good portion of a meeting talking about, and that's what the people do, is they talk about their experiences there. And this is a huge, when we got done with the 2 hours, and we were done with 2 hours, and we weren't all the way through the list. So
well, I mean, that MUFON meeting is a perfect environment for that, because everybody's very accepting, and you know, your story is your story, and it doesn't leave the room normally.
Yeah, no, I don't. Well, I generally don't talk about what we hear about the meetings, and it's certainly not, you know, last names and things, right, you know, because people just, there's a lot of people. My people at work, people know I do this. I've got. Did I give you the card? We have our card with our QR code. Yeah. I hand that out. Hey, if you want to listen to it, if you're interested in the subject, sure. If you're not, people always take. I don't know if they're being nice, but I get a lot of Sacramento listeners. Like, most people listen to us because they know us. Sure. You know, they know the people that are on. They know the guests, or they know me, or you know, they know something, and they want to know something about the subject. But what we're doing here is a little different than we do with other podcasts, or what's done with other podcasts. You have a high-powered, you know, guest. What I like to do is bring people on that are just regular people. Yeah. You know, the person on the street that you know, just has an interest or has had an experience. You wouldn't believe how many people have seen something. We all know it could be nothing.
Well, we talked about that at the last meeting, about how many reports MUFON got last year, last month, and I brought up, how many things are being seen that are not reported. Most people don't know how to report it. Like, who would I tell if I saw something crazy? Who would I tell? How would I go about reporting it? I think most people don't know.
Well, even Arrow, we know our lovely Arrow, Kirkpatrick, who runs it. I personally think he's a stooge for the CIA, but that's just my personal opinion. Because he's running around right now, even with everything that's going on with the disclosure from the Greer's project to, the Grush disclosure thing. And here's Kirkpatrick going, oh, there's nothing going on. Okay, you don't know anything?
Yeah, right.
So, I don't know. It's there's a lot out there that.
Well, you mentioned two things that come to mind. You mentioned the CIA, and you mentioned experiencers, right? So I went to a UFO conference in San Francisco. It was about 2 months ago, I guess. And I met a gentleman, and I don't think he would mind me using his name because he's well known in these circles. John Ramirez.
Oh, yeah.
He's retired CIA. And I wanted to have a separate conversation with him because we talked earlier about my military background. I served in the Navy from 77 to 80. Right about the time I was leaving active duty, I responded to an ad for employment. I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out to be with the CIA.
Oh, wow.
So I went through their interview process, and it takes a long time. It took about 18 months to get to the point where, and I'd already started a career with what we all called the phone company at the time. Because I grew up in Reno, so this is up in Reno, Nevada Bell.
Yeah.
And I'd already started there, and I think I had gotten married or was very close to being married, and I found out kind of 18 months into it that I was not going to be offered employment by the CIA. But it's so strange because when I did it, I don't know if they still do this, but I told John Ramirez about it. He said, I had to sign this thing that said if I was not offered employment, I would not try to find out why. But it drove me crazy. It drove me crazy. I must have called them 10 times. And I finally got this woman who said, I'm not supposed to say anything, but let me just take a look.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, maybe it was something in my background, right? She goes, no, that wouldn't be it. You never would have gotten as far as you did because my last step was because they flew me to LA 3 or 4 times for various tests.
Wow. And
then the last step was going to be to go to Washington, D.C. for a physical. And I was waiting for my plane tickets. They didn't come in. I finally called them, and they said, and she looked at it and she said, I think what happened is your name just fell through the cracks with our budget cuts.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this to John Ramirez, and I mentioned the time frame, and sure enough, that was right at the end of the Carter administration.
Yeah.
And they were downsizing. And John said, that's probably exactly what happened. He goes, with your background, I have no doubt if you'd kept trying, you probably would have eventually gotten on.
Yeah.
But so that's the CIA thing, and then you mentioned experiencers, and John said he worked for the CIA for 25 years and retired, and decided he wanted to talk about some of the stuff he'd seen, but he had to get all this cleared by the company, as they call it. The CIA calls themselves the company, And I've read that many times. If you want to publish a book or you want to talk about something, you have to get that cleared. And so he sent all his information to them, and they came back and said, yeah, no problem. No, go ahead. And he said he met, with all the UFO conferences he's gone to, he met more experiencers at his place of employment than he ever did at any of these conferences.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting.
That's fascinating.
So he had some really interesting things to say. I had a really great conversation with him in the lobby before his presentation that afternoon. So I kind of rambled there a little bit.
No, I've seen him on, I can't remember which podcast it was on. But he had a lot of good stories.
Yeah,
I don't personally think, and we'll talk a little bit about the Greer. I know you haven't listened to the whole Greer disclosure thing.
Right.
Greer wants to. Dr. Stephen Greer, he's got a lot of people coming out.
Yep.
And he had his National Press Club meeting few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of people, some people with the military. They had they came out and told their stories about it. They're just wow, crazy stories.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, you think, can they?
Excuse me.
Oh, you're okay. So they, this. So we're still waiting for what's going to happen. What Greer wants to do, I don't know if you've heard this, but what he wants to do, he thinks that there's a government above. There's the we the people government.
Yeah.
The one we all know and love.
Yeah.
But above them, there's another shadowy government.
Yeah, I'm in that camp. I think there's a lot of validity to that.
Yeah, and a lot of people think, and you talk just about and I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but yet I guess I am.
Oh, I am.
I'm
the whack job conspiracy guy.
Very nice.
Yeah, everybody at work's like, oh, go talk to this guy. He'll know something.
It's funny because I talked to Matt, and Matt says, "Yeah, I got people at work, and they know all about." They believe, and some people have seen things, and some people haven't, but they still believe. But Greer wants to. So he thinks this government, and what's happening is they're getting flying saucer crashes. I don't really like the term UFO or UAP. I like flying saucer. I want that flying saucer to be crashing. Although they don't all look like flying saucers, I guess some of them are oval or whatever.
Right.
And the government has got a response team, it seems, that just is on call all the time.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
Yeah. And they just go and they get this thing. So they take it. They've got the flying saucer. And they take this thing and they hide it. And then they go to, let's say, I'm just going to throw this name out there. Nobody kill me. Lockheed. Sends it to Lockheed for reverse engineering. They pick the company that they want to do the reverse engineering, which might be the best company to do it. I think Raytheon's another one, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But they take the UFO and they give it to them, and they say, so then whatever happens, they give it to them, and then they do the reverse engineering. They find out what they find out. They might have some discoveries, anti-gravity, a propulsion system, inertial dampening fields to where, you can not be liquefied by going, 1,000 miles an hour and suddenly stopping.
Right.
And, but the government's not supposed to do that. The government's supposed to put things out for bid. So they've got somebody making the call, and there's money, there's black, and so they're giving these black projects that are going to the people, flowing through the we the people government, and they don't even know where the money's going. Right. But they want to make sure there's plenty of it, because there's never any question about black project money or money going into the military.
Oversight. There's no oversight for it.
So it goes into the shadow government, the shadowy government that's above. Right. My big question is so when Congress goes in, or when a president even goes in, because, Reagan wanted to, he wanted to find out. I think he knew some things. But I think Clinton was the one that really wanted to know what was going on. He was told by GW, who was a CIA director for a time, not at this time, but for a time, told him Clinton wanted to know what was going on. Literally, he was told by GW, back off.
I read that also. And what you're talking about is feeding this stuff to industry.
Yes.
That leads right into a great book, which I'm sure you've read, The Day After Roswell.
Oh, yeah.
By Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso.
Yeah.
Great book. And it really goes into detail about how that process works. And at that time, I don't know if it's done now, how they do it now, but at that time, they farmed it out to different companies. Yeah. Let's give this one to Bell Labs. Let's give this one to, Lockheed or whoever it is. Yeah. And just see what do you think of this? And all they would say, and they'd say, well, where did you get this? Well, it came from our foreign technology desk.
Yeah, the foreign technology division.
What does that mean, right? That could be Russia, that could be China, whoever. Yeah. But you just put this blanket term, foreign technology, and then you don't have to answer any more questions.
Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. So who's the guy that gets to tell the president no? But I mean, GW in this case, but who's up there? Who's the one that, and who's the one threatening? Now, with what's come out now, is you know, you should be able to talk about whatever you've seen or experienced in the military or wherever. By the way, Arrow, it doesn't even have a website where you or I could report anything we've seen. You know, they haven't figured that out yet because I don't have the permission or something. You know, you saw the meeting. I don't know if you saw their meeting. And Kirkpatrick, well, you know, we don't have that website set up yet, which you or I could set up in 10 minutes. You know?
See, that's what I find so amazing, and I'm sure you heard about this recently. We talked about it at the last UFO meeting, the big sighting down in the big military base outside of San Diego, where the 60 some odd Marines sighted the triangular UFO. Yeah. And from the story I heard through Weaponized, a podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Yeah. 60 some odd Marines witnessed this thing. Jets were dispatched, helicopters were sent, a convoy of vehicles went out, and when I was watching the video, I saw these two lights. I'm like, that's weird. What are those lights? And then they explained, oh, those are two flares that we shot up to try to get a better view of this thing. Yeah. And as soon as they did that, it disappeared. Yeah. So you've got all these witnesses that Corbell managed to get people to speak to it. None of them, as far as I know, none of them were ever told not to talk about it. Yeah. So once they were asked, they got flooded with videos and still photos.
Everybody's got their camera out.
Yeah, but it never got reported up the chain of command. And why is that? You have this huge number of people seeing something unexplained, and there's no method in place to report that. Yeah. That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and they can't just go to your
Actually, that seems commander. Like government operation.
That's typical.
We don't have the website running. Oh, yeah, well, that's a shock.
Yeah, and it's just... So who is this? Who's up in the shadow government? So it's somebody that's above the president. And we all know that, based on what we know about the Kennedy era, I won't go into the Kennedy situation, but that he didn't like.
That would be a whole nother.
Yeah,
show.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother show.
That's another show,
right?
Yeah, we've done that a few times, but it's he didn't like the CIA because
if you want to have me back for that one, I'd be more than happy to get involved in that one.
Oh yeah, so you know he didn't like the CIA, you know, so it's always told, it's always not necessarily told, but assumed that the CIA is in charge of all this UFO stuff. Well, it's the CIA. It's the CIA. I think it's private industry somehow, and somehow they got a lot of teeth and are able to threaten people.
That's kind of a conclusion I recently came to also. If the President of the United States, I mean, supposedly Eisenhower said, we're coming down to Area 51. If I got to bring in the Army to see what's going on, I'll do it. Yeah. And they still were not allowed access. How can that be if it's a government operation? Maybe because it's not a government operation. If it's private industry, if it's private industry, you can keep out whoever you want, right?
Yep.
I guess.
And you can keep a better, and you could probably keep a better secret.
Probably.
Because he paid really well.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of these people, that's the other thing, is a lot of these people involved in shadow government are being paid a lot of money. But these guys are the ones threatening people. The first guy that says, you know what, I want to tell people about this. And the next thing you know, dudes, and the reason that I think that this isn't coming out is whoever, and now I don't really think it's the government necessarily, I think it's somebody is whacking people that are trying to come out, or they're somehow ruining their retirement system.
Or look at what happened to Bob Lazar. You know, this is part of my frustration with everything going on right now. You know, they talk about, the government has these craft and they're reverse engineering them. Well, Bob Lazar told us that back in 1989. Yeah. And what did they do to him? They basically destroyed his life. They erased all his educational training. They basically erased his past. And it was George Knapp that was able to dig it up and verify Lazar, basically verify his story. So this came out over 30 years ago, and now some of the newer people are just shocked to hear this stuff, that this stuff is being... well, a lot of us have known that for 30-odd years, but nobody's listening.
Yeah, Lazar's an interesting story. I mean, there's a couple of stories out there that I'm not entirely sold on. And Lazar's one of them that I think he was at. We saw his paycheck from EG&G. You know, he was, but he was only could prove that he was there a few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what did he?
And he says he only worked for the outfit for 4 months.
Yeah.
And he said it's the worst 4 months of his life because it screwed up everything. I'm
not convinced he was actually there 4 months.
Okay.
And this is everybody's got opinion, you know. It's
sure.
Like, you know what? The hell has opinions. But, you know, he didn't get his, I don't know, I want to call it the Q clearance, but it's probably higher than that.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to obtain that. He was in they let him see certain things. I think he was a technician that has seen things. He might have actually seen some craft or something, but only by accident. He's saying he was shown and he was the one doing the reverse engineering. I'm not sold on that. I don't think he got that far. I think they were in the process. They were bringing him in slowly. And before they actually got into that part, he wasn't able to obtain the ultimate security clearance. The story is his wife was having an affair with her flight instructor.
Oh, right. I remember that.
So, you know, so he was a risk. He turned out to be a risk. So I don't know. His thing is he left. You know, he's the one that decided. I can't remember if he's the one that decided he didn't want to do it anymore, or if they decided that, or if they shut him down. I can't remember what the reasoning was. Yeah. But
well, either way, it's still a pretty interesting story.
It's a great story.
You know.
But, you know, I'm not entirely sold on, because he had things, well, I've seen ships, and he went behind Area 51 in the camper, they had his camper and beer, and they'd watch the thing go up and do these fantastic things. That kind of story leads me to believe that, you know, they have, I think it's John Lear, of the Learjet family.
Son of the Learjet inventor,
you know, I believe he was a witness to one of these things.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
You know, Lazar was picked up and, you know, by the sheriffs. But, you know, that's but I don't know if he went quite, you know, as far as he said. Is he, you know, I believe he was there, and but I don't think, personally don't think that, I think he took a story, and I think he tells a great story. When I heard Joe Rogan and Corbell in his interview, did you hear that?
Yeah.
That's what sold me originally on it.
Well, the one that sold me is when he had a VHS tape out around the 89-90 time frame, which I got my hands on, and on the blackboard he's going through all these formulas way beyond my understanding of math and physics and all this stuff about how the craft operated.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it was so detailed it almost puts you to sleep because he's had so much information, but just found it pretty fascinating.
And you know, people say that's a common. He was a physicist, and they said that was a commonality. But I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just not really sold on it. I'd like it.
Yeah.
You know, he said there was, I think, 7 different. What was it? 7 different crafts.
7 or 9 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, one was, and there's really, I love the story. I mean, one was a farmer found it, and it was actually in his field. He's plowing his field, and they bumped up against something, and they dug it up, and it had been there for eons.
Oh wow, I hadn't heard that.
You know, and it's he mentioned that one on the Rogan interview where they bumped up against this thing. I have to
go back and listen to that.
They dug up. It's a long interview.
Is it?
You know, it's long, and you know, and you're drinking whiskey and you know the fun things. And they dug up this thing.
Don't make me laugh. I'll start coughing.
No. So you know, so yeah, I'm not really sold on Lazar, but you know, anyway, so shadow government. So what Greer wants to do, I always get sidetracked by different stories.
We all did that. Right?
So
there's so much. There's so much out there.
It was good to have Bill here. Bill used to drag me back in. Now come on, you're talking about the shadow government. So the whole thing about whoever somebody in the government is giving. They find the saucer, we'll say, or UAP.
Yeah.
They give it to Lockheed, or we're going to use Lockheed, although I don't know anything for sure. And but when it comes out and it's Lockheed, I want credit.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
That my guess was right. So, you know, Lockheed gets it. They're not, first of all, they're not supposed to just give it to one guy.
Right.
They're supposed to put it out for bid. Okay, who wants to, you know, who...
But how would you do that? I mean, I did contract stuff with AT&T and putting stuff out to bid. You got to explain exactly what you have and what you're hoping to get from it. But if you just give it to them and say, we're not sure what this is, do what you can with it.
Yeah, but
that's how the book talks about it.
Yeah, and they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to put it out for bid. But yeah, we know, especially based on what you know, and we all know about the bid process everywhere.
Right.
Is that, you know, how are you going to do that without putting it out? So meanwhile, you got a million people that know what the hell it is that you got.
Right. That's right.
And the cat's out of the bag. Okay, we know we can't do it, but so what?
Yeah.
So what? We found a saucer. What's going to happen if the public knows, Bob? What is our concern? If the public finally knows. I mean, even with this Greer thing, we're going to get off track again. Even with this Greer thing, you know, I don't know.
I think it would depend on how deep you went. Personally, I don't think the government will ever come clean completely. But let's say they did. Let's say, yeah, there's actually a program where we have allowed certain alien races to take some of our people for their own studies.
Right.
Well, you know what would happen?
Well, that would be a problem.
That would be lawsuit city.
Yeah.
Some lawyer would get really rich on that one.
Yeah.
If you knew I was taken and I had all this trauma that I've been getting therapy for 30 years and my family's disowned me because they don't believe this stuff is going on, and now you're saying, yeah, it has been going on and we've been participating. Yeah. Boom, lawsuit city. Yeah. I mean, and that's just one aspect of the problems with full disclosure.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing when you say, look, and this is the big change for me. The big change with all the activity right now is the fact that they're allowing military personnel to talk about it. You know, when the Tic Tac film came out, and they allowed those pilots to talk about it, that to me was the biggest amazing thing about the fact that they saw this thing was no surprise because they're seen all the time.
Right.
What the surprise to me was they allowed the pilots to even talk about it. That's the big change. And if they do nothing but allow that, they may call, okay, we're going to do full disclosure and let people talk about it. Well, that's not true full disclosure. That's not telling everything you know. Right, that's just
that's I mean, we'll go down that rabbit hole. Is there's some speculation that those craft are ours? We already have the technology.
Yeah.
And they were doing, exercises off the coast of.
And that goes all the way back to World War II and the Nazis having.
Well, and the other thing is the evil that we've done to try to keep this a secret that the government. I think the big problem is that, and I've said this before, is that people have been killed. You heard, where Forrestal, who was Majestic 12, you know that story?
Yeah.
Where, he just happened to put him in, I think it's Bethesda at the psychiatric ward.
Yeah, he fell out of the window, but he had the
noose around his neck.
The tie of his bathrobe around his neck. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, and all the glasses in the inside. It was some weird, the glasses on the inside. I mean, there was a lot of
There's a lot of stuff behind that.
So they often, why? Because we speculate that he wanted to come. He was one guy that said the public needs to know about this.
He wanted to come. He wanted it out in the open.
With Roswell. Because Roswell started this. Roswell started the CIA. Yeah. The CIA was put in place because of that. Because we needed to keep this quiet. So there was Majestic 12, the president, CIA. So the evil that we've done, even if the Forrestal thing somehow got disclosed that the government did that deal, many people don't trust the government now. So if you put out something that the government's been killing people simply because they didn't want a UFO public, might be anarchy. I mean, it could be ugly.
Yeah,
it could be ugly. I don't want to put it out there.
I'm back.
So we're talking about, all right, the shadow government. We're still on the shadow government up there. So who's pulling the strings, Bob? I mean, it's not. We've given this to Lockheed. Lockheed reverse engineers it. Then they sell it back to the government. You know, so they're is this where the money's, you know, that we give Lockheed money to do this development, and then they sell it back to us, and then we have it?
Well, I think the truth is, I think if I knew who was pulling the strings, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you.
No, probably none of us would be.
Right. You know, I always joke that I can't believe the Navy gave me a top secret clearance for 24 years because I spill my beans over every little thing. If I ever got taken captive, you know, like POW thing, I mean, I'd give up the, you know, threatened with withhold dessert, and I'll tell you anything.
You're not a hero, Bob.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not good at secrets, but no, I think there are some high power, very powerful people pulling strings behind the scenes. Who they are, who knows? I mean, you could look at the Bilderbergs, you know, the Bohemian Grove meetings every year. There's a lot of things you could look at to maybe come to some conclusions.
The Illuminati.
Yeah, you know. You know, a lot of people think the Masons are kind of involved in this, and I'm a Mason.
Oh yeah, my dad was a Mason.
And I tell people that may be, but they've never invited me to any of those high profile.
So do you
meetings.
go to the Masonic meetings, lodges?
I do. I haven't been in quite some time.
Is there a secret handshake? What is it? How does it work? It's
now you told me you would not ask me questions that you knew I couldn't answer.
I have to know. I have to know about the Mason. My dad was a Mason. He had the ring.
Yeah.
You know, with the Masonic symbol on it.
I was, there's a Masonic organization, they call them Masonic bodies, and there's an organization called DeMolay, which is for kids.
Oh, yeah.
For young men. I think they've opened it up to girls now. I'm not sure.
It was Job's Daughters when I was a kid.
Well, there is still Job's Daughters. There's Rainbow Girls.
Yeah.
There's DeMolay. There's a whole little bunch of offshoots, and so I was involved in DeMolay when I was a kid, and then and I wanted to join the Masons, but between work and I was trying to go to school to finish my degree and doing the reserve thing, and I just, you know, trying to raise a family and all this stuff, I didn't have time to join a lodge. And so finally I joined a lodge in 2002. I think it was 2002, and became what's known as a Master Mason in 2003, and this was down in the Elk Grove area.
Yeah. And
I was pretty active for a couple of years, and then just kind of got interested in other things and fell a bit inactive for a while. And then just here recently, I re-affiliated with the Roseville Lodge. Since I now live in Roseville, I joined that lodge, and I hope to attend meetings, you know, time permitting. So
is it big? I mean, is it a lot to a lot? Is there a lot of... I looked into it once just to see what it was all about, and I never really could get...
The Masonic Lodge has gotten actually much smaller over the years. There's been much less interest over the years. The average age of a brand new Mason, I think, is 40.
Yeah.
So most men that join are, you know, a little bit more mature, starting to look at things outside of work or whatever their interest is. You know, somehow they're drawn to the Masonic Lodge. But I think the numbers are dwindling. Most of the members that I've spent time with are quite a bit older than me. Now I'm 66, and many of them are much, much older than I am. And so, you know, as time goes on, I think the Masonic Lodge is probably going to decrease in numbers. And I think it's only because there's just not a ton of interest in it. Yeah, I don't know for sure why.
What did they do? Is it a volunteer work? Or?
There's a lot of volunteer work. There's a lot of fundraising. You know, there's an offshoot body known as the Shriners, which you're probably familiar with. Mm-hmm. They sponsor the Shriners Children's Hospitals. There's another offshoot organization, the Scottish Rite, which I'm part of.
Right.
They sponsor a hearing center down by Sac State College, where they they help children with hearing disabilities. And so every little organization has its own area that they do charity work for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Scottish Rite. We go there to events all the time.
Yeah.
There's a car show there this weekend we're going to attend.
Yeah. Yeah, they sponsor all kind of events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to an art show down there 2 weeks ago. It wasn't very good. It wasn't very craft show or whatever. It wasn't the best, but
yeah. But like I say, if the Masons are involved with this higher government thing or this hidden government, I'm not aware of it. And
or you're not admitting to it, Bob. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe they just haven't invited me into the club yet. I don't know. That's very possible. You know, we were going to tell you, but you know,
yeah, I never. I told you I wouldn't. Yeah, people will talk to me, Bob. That's the reason why I do this.
Yeah.
People say stuff. Yeah. So up there. Okay. So the above. Anyway, back to what Greer's doing. Yeah. So what Greer is trying to do, and this is probably the best. I don't know if this ever anything. Congress is going to have hearings. Okay, that's what has triggered this between the Grush. Basically, the Grush thing was the big deal when he came out, and he's David Grush, and he started talking about what he hasn't seen anything himself except documents and pictures.
Okay,
he hasn't put his hand. I want to put my hand on the saucer. I want to put my hand on the thing that can go.
You may not want to.
I know. Now people get sick, and
there's
that's the other thing
about it. A lot of
about
ramifications from touching one.
Yeah. So
you've heard the Rendlesham Forest story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So either you get sick or you have messages in the binary code that you write down in a book.
Right.
You know.
You have heard the story. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard all of the stories at this point. But my thing is...
Oh, I'll see if I can find one you haven't heard.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So, my interest is I'm kind of cutting out. We've done the whole history thing throughout the show.
Yeah.
You know, Roswell, we beat Roswell to death. There was a Roswell series we watched. We reported on every episode. One of the guys that work with me talked about each episode and dissected what it meant. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's the reenactment one. And,
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, it's really good.
That's a television series, Roswell?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen several episodes, but not all of them.
And it tells the story. And I really didn't know. It tells a lot of things that I really didn't know about. But are they real?
Have you seen the movie, the made-for-TV movie on Roswell?
Oh, yeah. I've seen. So we beat Roswell to death. I think. For me. Well, not for everybody. I mean, there's new people all the time. I didn't even know about that. But I don't want to say I've given up on the history of it. I want to know what's going on now. You know, where are we at? We've known. We think that the CIA or someone has killed people that have tried to come forward and do a tell-all about there was the general that, had there was the paper. I can't remember now. He was in his limo talking to someone about
the Wilson paper.
The Wilson paper.
I just heard about that at the UFO conference. I hadn't heard about that.
The Wilson papers is huge.
Yeah.
So there's lots of bits and pieces. I don't know if anything negative really happened about that to anyone, but the thing is, it's history, and it's like if has the government whacked people that have tried to come forward? I don't know.
Well, it's what's strange about it, and people ask me this all the time. Why are we only finding out about things years and years and years after they've happened? Well, it may be because what's happening today may be classified and covered up, and it won't come out for another 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
there may be things happening right now as you and I sit here that we don't know about, and we won't find out for several years.
Unless you put in a FOIA request.
But what would you ask for?
Well, unless you have a
everything
specific...
That happened, you can't say...
Some people... Have you... Okay, I'll throw this on. Have you know about the journey to Planet Serpo?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've listened. We're doing... Debbie and I are doing the book. We're talking about the book.
Oh, okay.
Literally page by page.
Oh, wow.
We're going through... If you don't want to read the book... Yeah, we'll pimp... But it is getting a huge response. People are...
Really?
We just did episode 6... for the podcast. We're
that's great.
halfway through the book, talks about Serpo. You know, the tie-in was, you know, now we're going to get lost again with what we're talking about, but you know, how we sent 12 people to Serpo.
Yeah.
And, you know, that Kennedy knew about it.
And you know why they cut it off, why they discontinued the program. From what I gather.
No, why they discontinued
the humans could not handle the emotional separation from family, friends, planet Earth, that whole thing. That's what I read. That's why they discontinued it, because...
Did they not do it? Where'd you read that? I never saw that. Did they not go?
No, they went.
Okay,
but they just didn't continue the program because they found that the humans just couldn't handle it.
But they did do their 13 years.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be 10, and they lost track of time.
Right.
Because of the time difference. And, you know, and then they came back. But not, you know, we won't go through. If you want to listen, Serpo 1 through 6.
I'll check that out too.
You know, we're basically just talking about, we're reading it.
Yeah.
And then interjecting our fun facts that we know or whatever. And,
excuse me.
You know, it's interesting, just something to listen to while,
you
know, because we don't know more than anybody else. And you know the tie-in to Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Spielberg and...
fill me in on that one.
Well, what that is, if you go to the end of the movie...
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. So, there's the 12 they show at the end. You remember? Oh. That's the Serpo people at the end of the movie.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And they're going on... Yeah, that's those 12 people with the sunglasses and the uniforms. Yeah. That's the Serpo group. They're going back with the Ebens, back to Serpo and the Zeta Reticuli system. So they go in. You know, that's the tie-in. Well, allegedly Spielberg talked to Nixon, I think, if I remember right. I think it was Nixon. And I think it was Nixon. And Nixon told Spielberg, "You're closer to the truth than you really know."
Is that right?
And there's a witness somewhere that was a witness to that conversation.
Oh, wow.
Between Spielberg and I think Nixon. My apologies, I get the wrong president because you know I think it was Nixon.
No, you know the story about Nixon and Jackie Gleason.
Yeah. And you know about Gleason's house up in New York that was fashioned after a UFO.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's not surprising.
Yeah, it's still there.
Oh,
but it's a broken. I think someone bought it and is trying to fix it up. I'd love to have that place, but there's a broken down gate. Yeah, you look that up on the internet. And then Nixon took Gleason down to Florida.
That's right.
And then he showed him some extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
Down in Florida, and then Gleason.
His wife, Jackie Gleason's wife, said he was never the same after that.
Yeah.
He was never the same after that.
So, I mean, and that's the other thing. It's the, do you go to church? Are you religious at all? Do you?
I would say
you're spiritual.
I'm spiritual, but I'm not, you know, organized churchy.
The other thing about the disclosure of, is there extraterrestrials and allegedly more than one species, I guess you could say. Some of the species aren't so nice either.
57.
Is there 57?
That's what I've heard. That's what I've read.
57.
Up to there's probably
57.
I would imagine, honestly, I imagine there's many, many more than that.
And nobody can, you know, and they are the interdimensional, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I forgot what I was going to go with that. So, so there's many species.
Yeah.
You know, and what are they doing? But
well, and you're right. Some are not so nice, which to me that explains why you get, you know, some experiencers say, you know, I had this interaction with these aliens and they were very nice. They showed me this, they showed me that, they told me some things, and then they brought me back. And then this other group will say, well, I was an experiencer and these aliens were not very nice and they did this and they did that. Yeah. And so the fact that there's different races with different agendas would make sense to me why that could happen. With
Grush, he's stating that they have actually attacked us. They've actually harmed humans. So that's one of his stories.
The L.A. story. You know, there was a big battle in L.A. Yeah. I don't remember what time frame it was. Late 40s, early 50s. Yeah, we were shooting at them. They were exchanging shots.
Well, did they shoot back at us, or was
that? I don't know.
They say that there was a lot of destruction in L.A. because of that. But they say it was because we were shooting straight up, at these,
Oh,
and it just came back down. The rounds just kind of came back down into the streets. And that's the story. But were they shooting back at us? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I mean, but the religious aspect, the reason I brought that, now I remember. The reason I brought that up is I envision people that are super religious are going to have a problem with there being extra, you know, having now the knowledge that they're extraterrestrials. We're not.
You know, I was under that impression also, and the few people that I've spoken to about it, I have a few family members that are fairly religious, and most of them don't seem to have a problem with the whole concept.
Yeah. And I think that's a misconception. I think that you're right. I think it's a misconception that it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, maybe.
In that respect.
Yeah.
There are people out there that aren't going to be religious or going to freak out anyway.
Sure.
And you and I, of course, we know that they're out there right now. But the...
and we still might freak out.
And we... Well, I'll tell you what, when...
Excuse me.
It was interesting because when the Grush thing came out, when his disclosure thing came out, I kind of got a chill because I thought, we're going to know now. There's going to be hearings. There's people in Congress that are, you know, there's representatives that support doing the hearings. And there's others that say it's ridiculous. There's nothing there. Why are we doing this? We've done this for years. We keep coming up with nothing. Those are the ones that I immediately say, you're either getting paid by this shadow government, and that's a real conspiracy thing. You know, they automatically say there's nothing to this, and that kind of freaks me out. It's kind of like I agree with the fact that we keep coming up with the same thing and nothing ever happens. Yeah, there's a little bit of me that thinks, yeah, there's a little bit of truth to that too. You know, that just keep coming up with nothing. I mean, but things do happen though.
Oh well, you talk about the shadow government. You know, I had a family member come to me a couple of years ago, told me a story about this enlisted guy in the Army Air Force, I don't know which one, that had the highest security clearance that can be granted. And I stopped him and I said, wait a minute, think about what you're saying. The highest security clearance that can be granted. I'm surprised they would give that to an enlisted person, number one. Number two, who's granting that security clearance?
Yeah.
The person granting in the clearance has to have a higher clearance. So you're not talking to somebody who's got the highest security clearance in the country. Somebody above him granted that clearance.
Yeah, the stolen valor people kind of crack me up. You know, it's like, I've done this, I've done that.
So a lot of the stories I get from family members, I can kind of throw some logic to it and tell them enlisted people doesn't make sense.
That I've experienced, enlisted people generally don't get that high. You might have a secret.
I had top secret.
You know,
but you know that.
You know, you're not going to get a Q clearance. You're going to need to be a little bit higher up there.
I tell people that the top secret clearance just gave me allowed me to do the job I needed to do. You know, and it's very compartmentalized. I don't know what's going on next door, and I don't need to know what's going on next door in order to do my job. But I have a top secret clearance to do my job because some of the stuff I'm working on is classified.
Yeah.
Or I'm seeing message traffic that's classified.
Yeah.
And that's fine, you know. So how high these clearances go, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's like you said, you were at Diego Garcia.
Yeah.
It's funny. Remember Malaysia? We'll go out in the rabbit hole again.
Oh gosh, here we go.
The Malaysia flight that disappeared off the face of the earth. That was really weird. But as we just experienced this week, and we'll talk. I mean, we could go another hour probably on the Titan disaster from. You know, but we won't, and that's unfortunate. I'll mention that 5 people had to lose their lives due to really arrogance and stupidity, and I'll just say that right now. That's how I feel about it.
I tend to be on the same page with you.
You know, but anyway, we won't. That'll be another time. But that Malaysian flight, but Diego Garcia, a piece of aircraft washed up there. I don't know what they ever did. I don't think they ever determined that it was part of that aircraft.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw a special on that where there was a researcher who claimed to have found many of the parts from the downed craft Not on Diego Garcia, but on the other side of the ocean. I don't know where
was it. Australia? I heard Australia had some. Thought they had some parts.
Yeah, it's.
And then I saw another thing. I saw a special on Netflix about it, because it fascinates me that we could lose a whole 747 and not have without it. Because usually an aircraft falls into the ocean, and
yeah.
You know, I don't know if you remember the flight 007. It was the flight 007.
Yeah.
My brother was. That's not a secret. My brother was involved in the fishing out of the.
Oh, okay.
While he was on board, because he was on in Westpac.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
he was aboard ship and he was involved in the recovery mission of the
yeah.
I believe the pieces, or at least involved in something of
well,
that.
there were rumors at one time that Malaysian flight landed at Diego Garcia for the purpose of offloading classified material on the plane. I got a problem with that, because that island is so small. You know,
not enough runway.
Nothing really happens on that island without people knowing about it. And now with Facebook talking about it, you know, back when I was there, the internet was not a thing. Facebook was not a thing.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, the runway itself is probably long enough. They've expanded it. They've expanded their runway several times.
Yeah.
So that could happen. But
did you see large aircraft come in there when you were there? Was there big aircraft coming in there?
We had
like transport C5s.
C5, C-130s came in pretty regular. We had some classified planes come in a couple times. This was during the Iran hostage crisis.
Is it long enough for the SR-71 to land there?
Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever seen that? It's not classified. You can talk about it.
I haven't seen the plane, but we got some classified. I don't know if I'm even supposed to talk about this. I guess.
Well, you don't need to talk about it, but I mean, I just had.
Well, anyway, we got word kind of secondhand that there was some mission going on, but again, it was compartmentalized to where I wasn't privy to the information. My supervisor was privy to the information. But it's interesting. I mentioned this in the MUFON meeting. It was interesting because the SR-71 has a very distinct silhouette when you look at the plane from the back.
Yeah.
Right? And the next morning in the chow hall, this air crew is walking through the chow hall with this silhouette on their T-shirt.
Yeah.
So I guess we came to the conclusion the SR-71 probably landed the night before, just because we saw the crew with the T-shirt on. You know,
it's not that big. You'd hear that thing come in, wouldn't you? Or is there always air traffic?
There's so much air traffic that
that's another transport came in. I don't know.
And actually, the airport's far enough away from the general living area
living quarters
that you don't even hear stuff normally.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, so we're gonna have to try to start to get to the end here.
Sure.
Shadow government.
Yeah.
And what Greer is trying to do, for those that I'm sure almost everybody who listens to this show knows, he's trying to use the RICO Act to bring out. So what he wants to do, what he's proposing, that, and the government has to do this. Or he's saying that it can be done by attorneys in the private sector to start this process.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. I'm not an attorney, but that they would start the process. It takes millions of dollars to start it, to where they would grant amnesty to anyone coming forward with the information about the shadow, not necessarily the shadow government, but what they know about, the extraterrestrial craft and the beings, and whatever they had and whatever proof they could bring forward, because according to the new process, they can't be penalized by the government for coming forward if they know about these things.
Well, see, I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good to say we'll grant you amnesty, from prosecution. So that's what we're granting you, amnesty from prosecution? Or because, this guy that just came out, was it Grush? Is that his name?
Yeah, David Grush.
Because apparently his career has been dramatically affected.
Well, he quit.
Oh, he did?
He quit before.
Okay.
Grush was, dogs are home now. Everyone will hear Max soon, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So he he left because he said he wanted to pursue this from the public side, not from being in. Right. He was harassed, and then he reported it to the IG that he was being harassed by just coming forward with information he was approved to let out. You know, the information that he requested to be approved was, there's some discrepancy there, but I'm sure it'll come out. But I agree with you. They can grant amnesty to the point where there's people that were involved in things like maybe killing somebody or ruining someone else's career. Or you see the dog. He just goes right in the pool.
Oh, that's
Debbie's always happy that he gets wet and he tries to come back in the house. Come to the house now. You know, I have a problem with it too. I think it's sketchy. I don't know if I would do it.
That's a slippery slope.
Yeah, and who are these people? Because you're getting ruined by people you don't even know.
Right.
But anyway, he wants to use the RICO. So the RICO Act, that's just like, remember the 20s, the gangsters?
Yeah.
That's what they want to use. They want to say, after this amnesty program ends, everybody in 18 months needs to come forward who wants to come forward and tell us if you're involved in this shadow government and you're on the take, because it's money. Let's face it, this is all a money thing. Because if you don't come forward, the RICO Act comes out. It's kind of like you're a gangster and you're still being a gang, doing all these gangster things back in the 20s. Yeah, you get arrested and you're put away under the RICO Act.
Yeah. Wow,
and you know, unless you just don't pay your taxes and you get put in jail for that. But anyway, so and that's what anyway, in kind of closing, that's what he wants to do. He wants to have these people arrested. He wants to, so basically it's forcing people, hopefully, to come forward. Because the shadow government, you know, do we get to decide that we don't like this? You know what I mean? Is it so far up?
Yeah.
You know, we don't get to decide. No, you know, that's the way I feel.
Well, even the
it.
politicians aren't deciding at this point.
No.
So,
but who? Like you said, who is it? Who's running it?
Like I said, if I knew, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with
you. You'd have to kill me. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up if I could ever, get this going. Okay. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Alien Probe Podcast. We welcome comments, questions, or requests to alienprobepodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook. Check out our website at alienprobe.net. Twitter and Instagram at alienprobepod. Like and subscribe to YouTube at Alien Probe Podcast. Thanks, Bob, for joining me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Had a fun time.
We're going to do it again next time. The Kennedy Conspiracy.
Ooh, I'm on board.
See ya.